Welcome to the Ratbag Nomads. In this episode we return to the Peruvian jungle on our canoeing bicycle touring adventure, where we meet the Amazon River, break our engine, fall down a hole, our boat gets stolen, and so much more. Good morning out there, Ratbags. It's the day after we've returned from the national park and we're in a town called Britannia, and we're heading today downstream to Regina. And we've picked up a hitchhiker and he's going to jump on the boat with us for the day. We've got to get out of here because there's another launcher coming in. Walt's ready? You ready, Walt?
I'm ready.
He's ready. After leaving the Pacaya-Samiria National Park, the feeling of having the Amazon to ourselves disappeared as we returned to the Ucayali River. We were back on the main transport hub of the jungle. The calls of monkeys and other animals had fallen silent, and there were no longer large trees. Here there are a few roads, and the rivers serve as the only means of transport for the local people. We travelled low-key as to not attract attention. Still, this didn't stop us from making new friends. We came across a small cargo boat that had been beached on a sandbank. The alligators and piranhas didn't seem to bother the locals, so we jumped in to lend a hand. Why are you wet, mate?
We just helped them out, helped Ernesto and Jose out to push the boat out of the mud. It got parado, it got blocked really well. So let's see, it's pretty shallow here, and it's nice to make friends along the way.
For the past few days our motor had started making strange noises. The motor popped and stalled a few times throughout the journey, and as the days passed it became clear that our little Chinese jungle motor was going to need attention. On top of that, I really wanted to find something else to eat other than fish or pasta. The following day we arrived to the village of Regina. Of course, two gringos turning up in an old rotten canoe with an engine that would put Chitty Chitty Bang Bang to shame drew a bit of a crowd. From the looks of the place, it wasn't a crime-free area, and the scene was a chaotic mess of huts and boats with rubbish floating around the place. It was the direct opposite of what we had experienced in the national park only days before. We checked out the marina to find the lay of the land and found un bolso con guardian, a raft guard, to store our boat and equipment. The raft guard and his family live permanently on the raft to protect people's belongings and boats. This was a necessity. It felt like the wildest place I'd been so far in my life. After negotiating the price, their son ferried us to shore. Gringos have hit town. So we're in Regina. We've just got our boat stored at the boat storage yard. Now we're on our way to the mechanics because the motor's making a really loud banging sound, and it looks like the gasket between the manifold and the engine is blown out. So we're gonna go and talk with the mechanical people. So it looks like we've done our exhaust gasket. It's going to cost us $6 to get fixed. And we're just hanging out here while the guys get it done. Luckily the engine is probably the most popular in Peru, and they've got all parts on hand. We've arrived in the small town of Regina, and it's our first stop in the last week where they've actually had power and cellular coverage. So just chilling out here and going into town to try and find some chicken to eat, because we've eaten a lot of fish the last week. A lot of fish, a lot of rice, and a lot of plain pasta. After repairs were finished, Walter took a fall down a hole whilst carrying the engine, landing on his ankle. He tried to shrug it off, but it was clearly a serious injury. After raising his foot and covering it in ice overnight, the next day it was no better and we suspected it was broken. We were the only gringos in the village, and Walter must have been a real sight hopping around the place. People kept approaching us about Walter's injury. The local jungle people swore by the healing technique of rubbing the injury. Everybody we met insisted that Walter get a healing massage. Even the local pharmacist told us to see an old woman in the markets. And we jumped in a taxi to go to the witch doctors to get Walter's suspected broken foot massaged. Butchered pigs and chickens hung in the stalls, and the market smelt of ripe fruit and vegetables. People gathered round with their purchases, and children with yellow teeth smiled as the gringos sat down on the wooden stall. The massage didn't look at all enjoyable. The old lady dug her fingers deep into Walter's swollen, possibly broken foot, and he moaned and wriggled, and I shared a grin with an old man with one eye. It was a comical event either way. It looked painful and not at all medically correct. Finally it was finished, and the old woman put the dressing back on and couldn't work out if Walter felt better because she had stopped or because of the massage. We searched the village for a set of crutches with no luck, and ended up at the local carpenter's house, sharing a beer and having a custom one built. We decided to leave Regina and head for Iquitos, the largest city in the Amazon, only 2 days away. The old lady and the carpenter had never charged us. They simply had wished us safe travels. Regina had treated us well, and I felt bad for judging a book by its cover.
Alright, we're about to leave Regina, and we stayed there a day because I was just kind of stupid enough to step into a hole when I was carrying the engine. So I got a bit of a colored foot now, and it was a nice carpenter who made me a sort of a walking stick. And yeah, it should be 3 days to Iquitos. Luckily the foot is better, and luckily I've got a good partner in crime to help me out, or help us out getting the boat loaded. And yeah, talk to you later, huh?
We left Regina with the sun shining, but the weather soon turned bad, and it rained all day. Solid buckets of water hammered down on us at times, filling the boat with water. It was hard to maneuver the canoe, and at one point we had to shelter in the long grass. We set up camp that night on the riverbank after discovering an abandoned hut. The weather had calmed down, and we were treated to an amazing Amazon sunset whilst being eaten alive by mosquitoes. We also drank what was probably ethanol-based rum and came with a small risk of going blind. It rained through the night, and the next morning it was slow going. Walter's foot was still an issue, especially walking in the mud. The unpredictable nature and personality of both the river and its people was a constant hindrance to us, that we embraced openly with the fact that we were on an adventure into the great unknown. Walter and I are two different people, both solo travelers united in an exploration of adventure. The necessity of having to rely on each other was refreshing, and also challenged our egos at times. Our strength and weaknesses combined made us a formidable team, and I felt lucky to be part of it as we made our way downriver. Soon came a moment that I'd never forget, as the river almost doubled in size. We arrived to the convergence of two great rivers, the Ucayali and the Marañón, and we witnessed the birth of the mighty Amazon River. Running through the north of the Amazon rainforest, the Amazon River has a flowing length of 6,400 kilometers. It's the second largest river in the world after the Nile. The Amazon River delivers 20 million liters of water into the Atlantic Ocean every second. The river was over a kilometer wide now. Our little canoe seemed so small against this colossal body of water. We were now only a few hours away from Iquitos, so we decided to push on. It wasn't long till the city came into view, and in the dark we found a raft guard and set off to find some fried chicken. Iquitos is the largest city in the world that has no roads connecting to it. There are a few cars, and you can catch a motor taxi anywhere in the city for less than $1. The area has a rich history and colonial heritage. It was the center of the rubber boom in the late 1800s. Sadly, it is estimated that 90% of the local population died from harsh treatment and slavery-like conditions forced on them by the European colonists. The boom ended abruptly when rubber trees were smuggled to Malaysia and a new industry started closer to European ports. Today the economy is based on exporting the bounty of the jungle to the world by the Atlantic Ocean some 6,000 kilometers away. We spent 12 days here waiting for Walter's bike to arrive from Pulkapa. The planning was underway for Walter and I's next adventure upstream on the Napo River to Ecuador. This time we would be going against the current, so we decided to invest in a larger motor. We had been instructed by some of our local friends not to buy a high-end motor, as we would likely be robbed or murdered in remote places for such an expensive item. We went with a cheap Chinese reliable option. Whilst I was working on the episode and staying in the city, Walter went off to check out a village and see some friends. So here we are at the hostel in Iquitos. Some things have happened. This morning someone stole our boat. So I got a phone call this morning from Walter, and someone stole our boat last night.
So yeah, I got a bit bored in Iquitos, and I got out of town. I stayed in the village a couple of nights, and then yesterday morning the boat wasn't there, and I was really surprised because our boat is really rotten. Like, it doesn't have any value. It's not even worth $10. I mean, everything's rotten and torn, and anyway, water coming in, so yeah, really surprised to see it's gone.
So basically today we have to go and buy a new boat. They didn't take the engine or any of our gear. So our boat got stolen the other day. Walter has been down the boat shop and he's bought us a new canoe looking thing. So this is the first time I've seen it, and I'm heading down now after buying all the food supplies and doing a little bit of paperwork to check out the boatman and see what he's bought. Walter introduced me to the new boat. It was the third vessel that Walter had used on the river so far, and we decided to call her the Ratbag 3. 2 meters longer, half a meter wider, and having a roof, it was going to be a much more comfortable journey. However, buying a used canoe in the Amazon is like buying a used car at home. Our new vessel turned out to have a lot of timber rot and required a lot of repairs. It leaked at the waterline, and the mountings for our new engine needed to be modified. Our departure from Iquitos was now uncertain. We plugged the holes with plastic bags and sheets of tin, skills we learned from the locals that were more than happy to share. We were now well into our way to the next stage of our adventure. Yes, our boat had been stolen and our new one needed lots of repairs. It's important to remember in situations not to concentrate on the negatives. You need to push emotions aside and to deal with each issue as it arises. It's okay to be sad and depressed when things don't go your way, but it's also important to acknowledge that things happen, to learn from them and to move on, not to be a victim of circumstance. It wasn't long before the boat was repaired and we were heading upstream to Ecuador, but that's another story. So stay tuned for next episode, where we monkey around, take our boat across land, get attacked by a drunken jungle man, and so much more on the Ratbag Nomads.